And gentlemen, I'd like to call this meeting to order tonight for our March 7th, 2024 special call meeting here with Dominion Power. Welcome everybody here. So I have one request here. It's I received a request by Mr. Charles Williams to participate in the meeting tonight by electronic communication from a remote location due to illness. I have approved such participation under the county's adopted remote participation policy and ask that the Board of Supervisors ratify this decision to allow Mr. Williams to participate remotely. I need a motion. I got a motion.
I'll make a second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Mr. Williams? Mr. Williams, are you here tonight?
Sounds like a seance. No chip?
He can't figure out the mute button.
Is he online?
Oh, yes.
That's what it is. It's the mute button.
He can hear us, but we can't hear him yet.
He's probably muted.
Yeah. He's not muted? All right. Mr. Williams, can you hear us yet? You can hear us. If you can hear us, we can't hear you.
But no one's hearing.
Been a busy week.
Is it? You got him straight, Robert?
I'm not sure what the issue is.
Probably has the microphone on his computer off.
Call him.
Not the Zoom, but the actual microphone. And all the information's off. Have him chat you.
Can you use the phone until that gets going? Put him on speakerphone. I say, if you can do that, we can call him and that's how you get that part going. Right. Is that an option? Sure, I mean, he's on somebody right there.
All right.
He may have his microphone muted or,
Still have,
Is that all right? Is that what you want? Is that okay to do that?
that's fine. You haven't got him yet, Robert?
I mean, I can see his mic move, but I don't know
Chip?
why we don't have audio.
Charles, you get him? Oh, you dialing him now? Okay.
He's trying to dial in probably.
I'll tell you what, while we're waiting, Mr. Parker, would you go ahead and open your meeting?
Or Zoom up here at the courthouse. The Zoom's not working, and if I can get him on.
I'd like to call the planning commission to order
Tell-
at this
tell him
time,
to-
and we do have a quorum,
pick it up,
so
get
we're
my
good.
phone, I'm gonna
So
call
we're
it
now in
tomorrow,
session.
okay?
All right. Dr. Peaker?
So the EDC has a quorum, and I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:04.
All right. Like, thank y'all. Welcome y'all here tonight. Any luck yet, Robert?
It's hard to tell with nobody talking.
Can you hear me? I can leave my phone on speaker. If you want to say something, you can. Want to do that until they get that going? But okay, all right, Mike. He said that he can hear everything that we're saying, but he'll call if he wants to say anything. If you
Okay.
ask him anything, he'll call.
All right,
He,
all right, thank you, Charles.
his microphone turned off.
He said, no,
Sound is
he
muted.
said his mute was fine. He said that he's checking out fine. I don't know.
No, there's a thing in the settings for sound. And you can set it for no sound,
Yeah, right.
which is what I do.
Give us just a few minutes here, Reagan. All right, thank you, sir.
It's hard to believe, yes. On December 19th. But everything's going.
How about now?
Oh, we got you now.
Way to go, Chip.
All right. Now I can hear you. All right. All right, since we got everybody here now, and next item is the solar discussion. Reagan, would you be so kind? Come on up and introduce yourself to everybody, please.
Hi, Reagan Corey, Dominion Energy. I'm sure this is going to move a few times, so bear with us on that one. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissions. We appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak to you all this evening about solar energy and battery storage. I'm going to touch on just a couple of these slides, and I'm going to hand it over to some of the experts that we have here. If we could go to the first one here.
Could you put the speaker a little closer? The microphone, rather.
How about that?
We'll see.
Loosen it up right there a little bit. It'll raise up a little bit.
How about that? Oh, let's see if it'll stay. Let's see if we can tighten this up. There we go. I seem to have done it.
Better.
How about that?
Yeah.
All right, got it.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So our mission here at Dominion Energy is to provide reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean energy that powers our customers every day. Now, some of our core values are the ways that we do this. Safety, ethics, excellence, embracing change, and one Dominion. Now, these are guides to how we make decisions here at Dominion. We went one pass, but that's all right. From corporate affairs, passed down to our line workers who are restoring your power during storms and outages. These are the ways that we embrace the decisions that we make here at Dominion Energy. Now, as with any project, and I know tonight we're not presenting a project, but with any project, we deliver the best in class. From our real estate team, to our engineering team, down to our landscaping team. All right? Delivering high quality work through these ethics and through our core values is essential for us here at Dominion Energy. We can go on to the next one. Now, Dominion Energy has a long-standing history here in Northumberland County with a little more than 6,000 customers and just about 30 employees and retirees. And we also provide an important tax base for the county. Now, you also will hear that little red star. I want to point out that's just where we are now. So tonight, you'll hear from a few different of our experts about the way that we approach, plan, and ultimately execute solar projects. In conversations with Stuart McKenzie, our planning commissioner, we also have a resident battery expert here, who some of you all might know. So please feel free to ask questions throughout this presentation. And speaking with Luttrell in planning this, you know, we always want to be a resource for the county with our knowledge and what we have to share. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Austin Jones, and he'll take you through some more of these slides here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Reagan. Thank you. How are you all doing? My name is Austin Jones. I lead our distributed solar development and acquisitions business for Dominion Energy. Expert might be a bit of a misnomer, and I'll let you all decide here in a moment. So why don't we go to the next slide? I'm not sure who's driving the slides, but let me just sit on this slide for a moment to just put in perspective what we're talking about. If you all can see it, so you may need to turn around. There's no screen over here. And I want to highlight this just for a moment because the bulk of this conversation is on distributed solar, and this is what a distributed solar facility looks like. What you're looking at is about 17, a little under 20 acres of land, Texarkana landfill in Northumberland County, and we've got 3 megawatts here. And so this just demonstrates, one, how easily a distributed solar project can kind of fit into the sort of natural landscape that exists in any community. 2, landfills are excellent sort of hosts of solar projects. It's a great way to reuse an otherwise underutilized facility. And then 3, that we'll get to in a moment, is really how easily it's interconnected into the distribution grid and how that helps the community. We'll get to that in a moment. But let me talk about how kind of why we're doing solar. If you want to go to the next slide. So Dominion, like Reagan mentioned, we are committed to providing affordable, reliable, increasingly clean energy, and solar is a critical component of that mission. And so, because one, solar is clean energy, that's the increasingly clean part. The affordable part of solar is right now the most readily available zero fuel cost resource that we have access to here in Virginia. And then reliability, that's an increasingly important and critically important part of our responsibility as a regulated utility in Virginia. And, I could go on and on about how solar is helpful, but I'll just share one example. In 2022, when we had that severely cold Christmas, where Dominion had to actually call on our reserve power stations. We had extreme weather, and so much so that our entire transmission system was kind of operating at kind of full capacity. And solar was particularly helpful, as we're kind of ramping up all of our units in the wee hours of the night. When kids are opening their presents, Santa's flying around. When the sun started to rise, that's when all of our solar facilities came online. And that was particularly helpful because that started relieving the pressure on our transmission system, relieving the pressure on our generation resources, because we didn't have to ramp up as many and we didn't have to cycle all of those facilities as hard as we would have otherwise. And so I say that to share that solar is a very important part of our very diverse fuel mix. Right now, we've got over 2,100 megawatts operating in Virginia. We have, over 7 gigawatts currently in development and in construction. Right now, and every year we file with our regulators for new projects as we continue to develop across the Commonwealth. We've got over 480 that were recently approved, another over 300 that are pending approval right now. And so we're very active, and though we don't have any currently active in Northumberland County, and I know Northumberland County doesn't look like this on the map. You can blame Microsoft Bing Maps for that, or just blame me, that's fine. However, Northumberland County is a really good county because it does have a robust distribution network. It kind of tees, which is really cool, along the main driveways of this county. And I know someone, I don't know exactly who, mentioned they were interested in learning about how much solar this county could host based on the available capacity on our network grid and the like. And so I would point you to the hosting capacity tool that Dominion Energy has. I won't share the link, but you could probably just search for it in Google, just type hosting capacity tool, Dominion Energy. You'll find it on there. You'll notice it's a really user-friendly tool that shows exactly how much capacity the distribution network can currently handle right now. And that's assuming there aren't any additional network upgrades associated, which, you know, anytime we build a project, anytime we study a project for interconnection to our system, then that's when they check to see if upgrades are necessary, if the capacity isn't readily available with what's currently on that system. So, and like Brady mentioned, if there are any questions to anything I'm saying, anything my teammates are saying, please do interrupt me. Let's ask questions. That's what this conversation is for.
What is highlighted in red? Is that Northumberland County?
Yes, that's what I was mentioning. I know Northumberland County does not look like this. And so,
Well, what is the green to the east of that?
yeah, that's right. Yep.
Well,
And I know
They're
that
not attached.
this region doesn't look like
The,
this.
the bay is not in there. Okay.
Guarantee you King George.
That's what I was mentioning.
All
You can blame me, blame Microsoft Bing Maps. This is the easiest way I could put it in a
Okay,
presentation.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you. Please forgive me. I appreciate it.
How does this benefit the county overall?
Excellent question. Why don't I put a pin in that and answer that in a moment? But I'll answer it now, and then we'll dive into it in a bit more detail later. But generally, it's good for energy. Obviously, your neighbors, your community members are benefiting from the green energy. There are tax benefits to be had, both for the county and any other public projects that those tax benefits would enable. And then these projects are also eligible for increased tax benefits, not tax benefits, excuse me, public projects that are. So there's a specific code in the law, in the Virginia code, that allows for projects associated with a solar project to receive a certain amount of money that is to be negotiated between the project owner and the county that can be applied to specific projects generally associated with that solar project. And so that's a way that a lot of counties have used to kind of benefit certain projects that, for example, a school may need a particular road that's adjacent to a project. They may need an improvement to a road or something like that. You know, this money could be applied toward that. This is a weird hypothetical example, but what I'm saying is there's money that for a large project is called a siting agreement, but effectively the same thing is available for distributed connected projects as well. So that's another idea, or another way benefits the county. And then individually for hosts of these solar projects, the landowners are getting either a purchase price, you know, that's a one-time lump sum of income from the project owners that are buying their land to host this project, or it's a passive long-term lease revenue that they're getting from hosting this project. So those are several ways that the county is directly and indirectly benefiting from solar projects.
Can you folks hear me now?
Yes,
I didn't quite hear that question.
You can hear me now?
yes,
I can hear you. Yes.
Sorry for the delay earlier. Earlier you were talking about how much solar the county could host. Is that a direct reflection on how much solar Dominion could receive?
If I understand your question, yes. Not necessarily. Right now, what's currently reflected on that hosting capacity tool is a direct reflection of the current existing infrastructure that's on those power lines. So it's a function of the current engineering design of those lines. So what size those lines are, what voltage those lines.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
To add to Mr. Long's question, I'm gonna ask it this way.
Okay.
How's it gonna benefit the citizens of this county?
Sure, yeah. Similar answer, but so your citizens are not only benefiting from the renewable generation, which again, here's why that's helpful for your citizens. Because in an event where your citizens and your community and your county are using a lot of energy, there's a lot of load kind of coming from a particular community, this community, having a distributed generation resource sited locally, then it consumes that energy. And it consumes that green energy, which is generally helpful for the environmental integrity of your community. And it uses that energy first before it needs to transport any outside energy that may or may not be clean energy.
So will they see a reduction in their bill?
Indirectly, because it's a zero fuel resource. Yeah, so the sort of mathematics behind it can be quite complicated, but you know, as a regulated utility, we do kind of mutually share in the cost of constructing these facilities and operating these facilities, but then we also share in the economic benefit that comes from operating these facilities at a low cost. And so what I mean by that is if it increases your bill by a certain amount to build and operate a facility like this, it also reduces how much you need to procure, not only fuel, but other market purchases.
Okay. So I've done a little bit of research.
Mhm.
2022, Dominion profited a little over $2 billion. 2023 evidently was a bad year. They only profited $1.3 billion.
Okay.
And in doing the research on some of these, and along with that, they had 2 price increases. All right, this is with solar added to resources that they're using now. So we've really not seen, and any research really showed where solar has reduced any bills or any funding. Matter of fact, if you look, and I pulled up all of the solar sites in Virginia, this is updated. The majority of these solar farms are not for the citizens' use.
Exactly.
It is Amazon, Facebook,
Right.
UVA in different colleges. So I understand in the long run, that's gonna save some usage.
Mhm.
But when you put a solar farm in a community like this, it's something we have to look at all the time.
Mhm.
And you don't get any benefit from it at all, not the citizen. We have one in a neighboring county. Huge solar facility. That's for Amazon. And you keep talking about tax breaks and everything else goes along with it. I don't buy it. Matter of fact, I read some articles in this, and it's several other larger solar farms all across the state that don't benefit any of the communities. It's Amazon, Facebook. In another interesting article, when you talk about these battery storage sites or these wind vines. In another article I read, it states who's gonna pay for them. It's $9.8 million or $1 billion. Well, I can tell you who's paying for it. We are. Because on our electric bill, we got offshore wind. It isn't that much money, but over all the customers that Dominion has, it adds up. So we're actually paying for wind vines or wherever they're being used on these projects for clean energy. And a lot of these projects are funded by the government. We not only have that, we got clean energy projects is another fee that we're being charged. The coal ash removal or the closure on that, we're being charged for that. So when they come in and say clean energy and it's affordable, I disagree. Because at the end of the day, we're paying for it. We're paying for it after it's been subsidized by the government to put it in place to start off with. So I don't understand how it's affordable, or it's gonna be affordable.
Thank you for that. May I address a couple of your, and it sounded like you have a similar concern, so may I address a couple of these? Well, actually, yeah, why don't you go ahead first?
So this kind
Now
of
I'll
builds,
address a few things that he said.
it builds on what Mr. Brand is talking about. So one of my questions was, what I heard you say was it's a mutual responsibility for construction. What that stands out is that means the citizens of this county are going to be responsible for a portion of the construction, correct?
I'm not sure we have the same understanding with what
What,
you're
what does,
saying.
okay, so my understanding of mutual responsible construction, you said we are mutually responsible for construction. Who's the mutual in that word?
So let me make it a little bit more clear. When I say that I am referring to the agreement that Dominion Energy Virginia has with our state regulators to provide electric power to any customer that needs it
Okay,
in Virginia. And
So
so when I say we're mutually responsible for the construction and operation of these facilities, it means we are sharing in the cost of that.
who's we? The state and
This-
Dominion
No.
or the county and
No, no,
Dominion?
no. The customers, electric customers and Dominion.
Which means county,
Sure.
which means me.
Sure.
Okay,
And me.
so understood, right? But mutual means the county
It
citizens will
means
bear
that,
responsibility.
yeah,
Okay.
anyone that is getting power from Dominion Energy, that's what it means.
Does that mean we have first right of refusal? For example, if this is constructed in Northumberland County, do Northumberland County citizens have first right of refusal for receipt of that electricity? Or does that electricity go somewhere else, right? So that's another question. I know you're gonna get to these in a second.
Sure, yeah, let me write these down.
Then I also have a question, because again, if it's being constructed locally and we're responsible for the cost, I want the benefits first. I don't want them going out of this county. Then I want to know if Dominion is participating in the national blueprint for 21 to 30. What is Dominion's participation and or engagement? So for those that don't know, that is
Can you please describe that a bit more?
the Department of Energy, under this administration, has a program called National Blueprint for lithium ion batteries. So lithium ion batteries are hazardous waste. They are not sourced from what we would consider ethical practices based on how they're mined. So the US government is trying to build a supply chain for lithium ion in the United States. Because we have such a problem. Most of the stuff, I'll be blunt, a lot of it comes from kids working in mines in different African nations. And when you dispose of it, it's hazardous waste. So I would like to know in this, I read the presentation and I'm following it on my phone as much as, with my glasses. How would the batteries be disposed of? They're hazardous waste. Are we mutually responsible for the maintenance of this facility to include any disposal of hazardous waste materials? What liability does that bring to the county, or is that completely borne by Dominion Energy, or is it shared with the landowner? So the national blueprint, what are y'all doing in participation with that? How are we going to dispose of this hazardous waste? And who's responsible for the cost of that disposal? And then if we're talking about mutual responsibility for the construction, do we have first right of refusal for the energy? That's enough for now.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm sure there'll be more.
Oh, there will.
All right, so. And I'm gonna call on my teammate Kelsey Jewell here to address your battery questions, because I'm not the expert there. But let me address some of these solar questions, and happy to address how solar is disposed of, but you may not be interested. I'll let her talk
No,
about.
we're all interested.
All right, so you mentioned something about how these projects are funded by the government. Can you, before I offer any thoughts on that, can you describe that a bit more?
Well, it's known that the gentleman that owns Facebook has funded a lot of these solar projects.
Yes.
Are you
Also-
describing the tax benefits that these projects are receiving? Is that what you're?
There's also grants.
And it's also grants.
Okay,
So it is government funding and private funding involved in this.
okay, that's what you're referencing. Thank
There's
you.
grants,
Thank you.
there's tax breaks.
Yeah.
There's tax offsets, there's rebates.
Now,
I appreciate that.
I want to
just wanted to
clarify
be
something.
clear. Yeah.
I'm not against solar. I'm more toward if an individual wants to save money, that they're a whole lot better off to seek some grant funding or financial aid, or whatever it is, whatever they can get. Put solar on their own property to run their own home. And we have some individuals here in the county that's done that. In that way, they're benefiting 100% by that solar energy that's being generated. And it is a direct cost savings for them. I'd much rather see that than to see solar farms. out here, and it's really not gonna benefit us. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you're gonna have to, it's gonna be a hard sell for me to agree with you that it is really gonna benefit us here, this county, because it's not. And it's very disturbing when you look at your electric bill and you see things on there like it's for the wind bonds and all of that. It's, you know, we're paying for that. And it's gonna be another fee on there in the future for solar energy.
So, no, so all right, let me address the funded by the government really quickly. Dominion's projects are funded by our shareholders. So we pay for those. We go to the banks, we get construction financing, we finance our own projects. There may be a rare occasion where we seek available grants from the federal government or the like. What that does is reduces what we end up asking for cost recovery from our regulators. So if there is an opportunity where we're getting any federal funding, it's just reducing the costs that we are mutually sharing. So the tax benefits, again, that's a cost that's getting pushed back to our customers. So that savings is being shared because we're sharing in all the other costs, we're sharing the benefits as well. And that's actually a law. We have to amortize those tax benefits across the life of the project. And so we are in fact sharing any benefits realized from these projects. So that, I hope that answers that, or addresses that. I'm not here to win hearts and minds. I'm just here to share information and answer questions. And so in terms of, you also mentioned, Mr. Brand, saving, that these projects are serving companies like Amazon, Facebook. Yes, there are projects that are serving customers like Facebook, Amazon. They have sustainability goals. The way they do that is by installing projects. They buy those projects, they buy the energy and RECs from those projects. What I'm talking about are not those types of projects. So I just want to be crystal clear in that the energy, the renewable energy credits that are associated with the projects that I'm describing, these projects and this energy, these RECs are serving, and the tax benefits are serving all of the Dominion Energy customers, not an individual customer like Amazon, Facebook, or the like. So I just want to,
So we get first right of refusal, all the solar energy that's generated by any plant in Northumberland County first is used for customers in Northumberland County
absolutely,
before it leaves the county.
yes.
Which means
And that's-
people will have zero transmission on the power grid from the other sourced energy. And it's feasible then if a project comes into Northumberland County, I would be 80 or 90% solar powered. It's not going to go over to Lancaster. It's not going to go to Richmond. It's not going to go to Richmond.
Yeah, that's what I was describing. And it sounded like you were following along, so you jumped ahead.
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly on that. Yep.
You did, you read correctly. Exactly. So because these projects are connected at the distribution level, that energy is going directly to your homes, your businesses. It's getting served locally first. And because it's connected at the distribution level, those projects are consumed locally. And so again, because they're not serving individual customers, that energy is distributed locally. So I have a different understanding of first right of refusal because I work in contracts, so I won't use your language. However.
No, I'm using it intentionally. I'm using it intentionally.
I understand, but
Right of first refusal.
Either way, I want to know that I don't have to pay other costs if I'm getting quote unquote reduced cost solar energy in my county. That's what I'm looking for.
I think that's a bit of a different question,
Okay, never mind. Keep going.
but hold on one moment, because I do want to get to your question also. And I think we tackled your first right of refusal concern. And if I may, can we hold your battery questions for when my colleague gives her discussion? Okay, thank you. I'm gonna hold on those things. And do you have a couple of other questions?
Mr. Jones, there's going to be a separate hearing on batteries, which I believe would encompass storage, and that would be in April?
That is the smart meters.
There is a discussion here. Part of this presentation includes.
Oh, okay.
batteries, yeah. See, your colleague here has already read it.
I knew it.
So,
It's the next slide, yeah.
Okay. You described the distribution system in Northumberland County as, the word you used was robust.
Okay.
What does that mean? What kind of capacity does it have? Is the existing capacity sufficient to handle a 3 megawatt power plant like Slide of Albemarle County?
Yes, to
It
answer your
is.
question, most simply. So the corridor that kind of runs along 360.
360,
And
yeah.
forgive me if I'm not from here. I don't know the roads as well as I probably should, considering I'm presenting here. But yeah, the one that's perpendicularly, the 360, that has a hosting capacity currently of 20 megawatts. And so, you could conceivably have several small projects.
That's in the wires themselves, the capacity of the wires.
The capacity of the wires and the substations that support those wires.
Okay.
And then along, so perpendicular to that, road that is sort of main thoroughfare.
200.
Thank you. That is a bit more constrained. And what I mean by that is there are already some facilities on that. It may be aged infrastructure. And that, I think the last I checked, has a current hosting capacity in a few different sections. I think there's about 4 megawatts in one section, maybe 6 megawatts in another section. Don't quote me on that, but it's certainly less than the 360 corridor.
Right. But we had a meeting with Northern Neck
Electrical.
Electric Cooperative.
Mhm.
And they indicated to me anyway, that the capacity in the existing wiring system would not be sufficient to handle a medium or large solar project. Maybe it's just on their side. Of
I can't
360.
speak for Northern Next infrastructure.
Oh, I know. It may be their side.
Mhm.
And it may be that they'd rather not pay to upgrade the wiring.
That may be,
I don't know.
We could speculate all day. Yeah, that may be the case. I do know for our system, there is available capacity for systems right now. And if there is a need to enhance that infrastructure, then the project owner would be responsible for that cost.
Who would be?
The project owner.
Oh, okay. Good. Thank you.
Is it possible then that the current infrastructure that we have to handle a certain amount of current, if a couple of larger units were to come in here and bring our current up to capacity with the lines, then that would probably hinder some smaller units from wanting to start a solar farm themselves, like a farm that wants to put a solar in to run everything at the farm.
Can you go through that again? Just
In
I
other
just want to make
words,
sure I'm following.
if a couple of large solar farms made its way into Northumberland County
Okay.
and took the capacity of what you currently have out there to put that current in and out.
Mhm.
Let's just say on Route 200, where
Mhm.
it was less than 360. Would that prohibit small individual private people from putting in small solar farms to run their farms or their businesses? Because the big units have already put you up to capacity?
Theoretically, no. And the reason for that is, one, those big units are going to necessarily have to enhance the infrastructure for safety reasons, reliability reasons. And so what is-
Enhance, excuse me for interrupting.
Yep.
Enhance, you mean they're gonna have to add on to what they got now?
I mean, they're going to have to allow for that infrastructure to be made stronger such that capacity is increased. And so it's been Dominion's practice to strengthen and harden our system to a point such that if available capacity is needed, then that's allowed. But the reason why I said theoretically at the beginning is because small systems like that are serving individuals' homes, farms, or things like that, that is a very small sort of impact to the system that it typically doesn't require as large of an infrastructure enhancement as a large facility would. However, they are still required to pay for any sort of additional infrastructure upgrades that may be necessary, albeit at a smaller scale, as would those larger facilities would be. And so if those larger facilities, let's say, you know, this line can handle 3 megawatts right now, someone wants to put 6 megawatts in, then I would guess that the infrastructure required would likely upgrade that system to a point where it would then be able to handle an additional 10 megawatts. Hypothetically, we're just guessing here, but that's what that project owner would need to pay for, thereby allowing 4 more megawatts to be available on that system.
And that's what you've seen in the past.
Mhm.
So, but also with what's this, the first year's asked. Say I'm a farmer and I'm gonna put in enough solar power to run my farm. I'm not allowed to feed that back into your grid anyway, correct?
No, that's not true. You definitely, well, under the current net metering rules, you are allowed to. So in the event you exceed, you
That's what I'm
produce
saying.
more than you use. Oh, sorry, did you want to add to that question?
I'm telling him that's what I was concerned, because they are allowed to sell back, get credit or whatever they.
Yeah, which is why I described that project owner, this person that's installing a system at their home, their farm, you know, they still do need to pay for the interconnection infrastructure because that's a safety concern. Because you're feeding that power back on the grid. We need to make sure that doesn't impact the rest of the grid and the safety and reliability and integrity of that grid. And so in the event you exceed your system produces more than you use, then yes, you do sell that power back onto the grid, you put it back onto the grid. And so the infrastructure that Dominion needs to install to accommodate that does have a cost associated.
I just wanted to make sure in case a large system was to come about, probably not, but if it did, that we'd still have room for smaller ones to take place.
Theoretically, there is still room for small ones.
Once Dominion puts in a solar farm, do they keep it or do they sell it?
Dominion is in the interest of owning and operating our own systems. And so that's because the energy and renewable energy credits from our systems go to our customers. So we own and operate.
What is the goal of Dominion? What's the target? How much solar do you want to have as a percentage of your capacity, and how much land do you suppose that would actually take? There's a reason for my question. It's estimated that if you were to power the United States completely off of solar, it would take a land area the size of Texas, a little bit larger at this point.
That's similar analysis, you're right.
And I'm seeing reports that there's localities, states, and even at the federal level that are pushing for land use of up to 14% of an area's land to be dedicated. That's an order of magnitude larger than the 8% that's represented by Texas. So I'm asking, is it Dominion's position and goal to replace the existing power sources?
Dominion's position is to have a diverse fuel mix that enables us to provide safe, affordable, reliable electricity to our customers. That is Dominion's goal. That is also increasingly clean. And so solar, we don't have a specific megawatt target, which we have plans that we don't sort of specify kind of what our regulators should dictate. And that's, you know, in our integrated resource plan that we file regularly. But you'll notice in that what it describes is a very diverse fuel mix that enables this safe, affordable, reliable, increasingly clean.
I would hope so, because the difference between, say, a coal-fired plant that's up there in King George and a solar farm, the energy density is measured.
It's very
One is billions or trillions of times more energy dense than solar. Solar is one of the lowest energy.
These are very different functions. And so that's another critical component. So the coal-powered facility you're describing, that's a dispatchable unit that serves base generation load, whereas a solar facility doesn't do that. Solar facilities are not as dispatchable.
And I'm seeing where there's trade-offs. You know, you've made the mention of clean. And while you're using solar panels, they are absolutely clean. but the manufacturer end and the disposal end are not.
I think that's a debatable point, but okay.
So I'm just concerned that, it kind of looks like when you look at beyond just Dominion, when you look at what's going on in the world and the country, it kind of looks like somebody's trying to replace the existing way we do business.
I don't think I see it that way. I think what I see is that we are adapting to evolving technologies and evolving market trends and trying to ensure that our customers are able to respond to that while not paying exorbitant costs for that, while also preserving the environmental integrity. And
I've got environmental questions too, but I'll save those for a little bit later. I'll give you a
Okay.
break and we can
yeah,
continue on a little
that's
bit.
fair. But we need to have a clean environment, and that's why solar is important to our fuel mix.
I'll be bringing up the trade-offs. It's not, there's no absolutes in that.
So your Dominion website says Virginia, Dominion wants up to 16,100 megawatts energy by the end of 2035.
So can you read that quote again, please?
16,100 megawatts by the end of
That's
2035.
16 gigawatts.
Yep, 16,100 megawatts is 16.1 gigawatts. You're right. And that, so what you're referencing is the Virginia Clean Economy Act that was codified in 2020, signed into law by Ralph Northam. And what that did, that was an effort to sort of bring clean energy to Virginia. And so what it did is a number of things. And one of those being, it required the Phase 2 Utilities, Dominion Energy Virginia, to petition to the commission 16,100 gigawatts of zero carbon generation, 1,100 of which needs to be projects that are 3 megawatts and smaller. And that's what we're talking about here, distributed connected projects. So more specifically, 1.1 gigawatts of solar needs to be petition to the commission by 2035. And so that is something that Dominion is committed to. We're committed to helping the Commonwealth reach its sustainability and renewable energy targets. And those same targets are consistent with not only our sort of carbon neutral future, it's consistent with our mission of, like I've said, innumerable times now, providing safe, reliable, clean, affordable energy. And so because solar is critical to that, and the state law complements that.
All right, I hear that Dominion's looking to put or trying to put another gas-fired plant up on the James. You hear it on the news occasionally.
I'm familiar with what you're describing.
All right, gas-fired, that'll produce electricity 24 hours a day. Solar only produces as long as sunshine as you're getting enough sunshine.
That's correct.
All right. I know you have some nuclear plants in.
You do.
Why not more of a push for nuclear, which would be a smaller footprint of land? All right, generates it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 and so on. All right. Solar takes up a lot of area, a lot of land. A lot of that land is valuable farmland that's being taken out of crop production. A lot of it's timberland. Aren't we depleting our resources also, like natural resources for timber and so on, and also for food production?
There's a lot in your question. Great question. I appreciate that. So if I don't address all of it, then please do ask it again. So to answer your first part about why not nuclear instead of solar. So we're doing both. We are actively pursuing nuclear. We're actually one of the largest nuclear operators in the country, and we are continuing that because of how important nuclear is to our diverse fuel mix because of what you described, in that it does provide 24/7 generation at a low cost with zero carbon. So nuclear is certainly not off the table. That is very much an important part of our business plan in our generation fuel mix. To answer your question about removing resources, natural resources from the environment with solar and displacing those, I think I would, that may happen in some cases. However, where we seek to site and host solar facilities, it's in areas where we try to avoid that wherever possible. But what we're also doing is working with landowners that have already made that decision to host those facilities there. So these are some farmers that I've personally worked with that for one reason or another could no longer make their crops viable, such that the solar was putting them in the black, whereas the crop that they were growing could not get them there. Or the silviculturists that use the timberland that was just no longer a viable business for them. And so solar became a better option for them. So we're working with landowners that have already kind of made those tough decisions for themselves and their community members and their neighbors. So it may happen. I won't deny that we have to cut down trees sometimes, that we're using land that could have previously been for a particular agricultural use. But we're working with landowners that have already come to terms with those tough decisions.
Yeah, when you're looking at taking 14%, that's a lot of land area.
14%, are you referencing this
Especially
number?
for this county.
Are you referencing this number he described?
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure what that number is. So I'm not sure I can answer that specifically.
But even if we took 10% of the land area in this county, that's a lot of land area.
That's a whole lot of land area. I'm not sure.
Yes.
I'm not sure
That
anyone
is a lot.
suggesting we blanket Northumberland, 10% of Northumberland County with solar. Are you receiving proposals that way?
No, what you read, what you see through the internet.
Yeah, say off the internet.
Now, no, I can't. I only believe half of what I hear on the internet.
Yeah, all right. That's safe. That's safe.
So, yeah.
The internet's a dangerous place.
Yes, it is. It is.
But for a small county like Northumberland that doesn't have rail, doesn't have an airport, or say doesn't have any kind of shipping port. And we rely on farming, forestry, agriculture, small businesses, fishing,
Mhm.
but we also rely on people coming in to visit tourists. So what does Dominion look at when it comes to risk versus benefit? And coming into a small community like this, knowing that everything that you may put here in this county is going to be on our main road. And I've heard this from people that come vacation here. I've heard it from relatives that people don't want to see that when they come into this county. They come here because it's a beautiful place to visit. And, you know, we get a lot of good conversation from the realtors, and like I said, a lot of folks that come in for vacation.
Mhm.
You know, they come here for the beauty of the county. Where they live, they already see this.
Yeah.
They don't want to see it here.
Okay.
As far as an economic standpoint for the county, and from where I sit, risk versus benefit. How much are we gonna risk to get a very little benefit from any of these solar farms?
So your viewshed concerns are warranted, and those are shared really everywhere that is hosting a solar facility, and I can appreciate that because I just drove here. It is beautiful. It's quite beautiful, and so anytime we build a solar facility, viewshed is a primary concern of ours, and so we're gonna design it such that you can't see it. That's the primary goal, because like you said, people usually don't want to see it. People do want to just have it be passively in the background, providing clean energy, providing the economic benefits to that county, of which they do exist. Just despite your, I understand how you feel about that. But you know, the landowners that are hosting them, you know, provided that we've installed it and designed it such that you can't see it from your main roads, then that's passive revenue for that landowner that, for one reason or another, may not be able to farm their land anymore. And then it's passive tax revenue for your county. It's an additional revenue source that was enabled by the Virginia General Assembly a couple of years ago, in addition to that tax revenue. And so there are tangible benefits from these solar facilities in this county.
But on the real estate side, how much of an impact does it have on someone trying to sell their home?
So there have been multiple studies that have concluded there is no negative impact to land value.
And I've read some of those studies.
Mhm.
And yes, in some states such as California and all, there has been little to no impact.
Mhm.
But in some of the other states, there has been a minimum to moderate impact. And that is also a concern.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm just trying to get on the facts
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
straight because, we set up here, we have to do what's best for our citizens.
And I think that's your job. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. That's why you were elected.
So speaking of economic impact, will we need to invest in new fire equipment? Because lithium ion batteries, when they have a fire, they're extremely dangerous and they're extremely hot. What happens if there's a fire?
Can we?
Yeah, so thank you, Kelsey. She will address the specific.
Let's get that
However, but I do
discussion. got
want,
Okay.
questions on that.
Okay.
yeah, but I do want to address, generally, fires are dangerous. And so anytime we are going to permit a project with your county and your county staff, then there is a detailed fire safety plan that gets included in that. So we work with your.
I'll defer the experts on that one.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because I think there's probably
We work
200 in
with
New York City alone, like in the past.
We
couple
work with
months.
your fire marshal,
Okay.
With all of our project development to ensure proper training and proper understanding of safety routes, proper communication channels, just to minimize in the event there is a disaster, any sort of negative outcomes from that.
Historically, I don't think that's been going very well.
Historically, for
We-
you're
for
talking about
the region, not
Virginia
just that, the firefighting capabilities, the training, the hardware, but that doesn't exist here. And
Just so I understand your question, you're saying that the training that Dominion is offering your fire team is.
no,
inadequate?
I'm happy to hear if you're gonna offer the training and certifications for them to handle the types of fires necessary. I'm really happy to hear that. If that's in fact the case. But so far, nobody's been able to do anything other than say we have local people that'll come and put out your fire, but they're on the other side of the Potomac.
Or let it burn.
Or they'll let it burn.
Why don't, because there are several questions that
I think we
Teammate
need to
Kelsey,
save
yeah.
it, let's save it fire related stuff in the battery question for that section, because it's a lot of
Sure.
information that we gonna need.
I understand.
in battery.
Maybe it's time for batteries.
One more question. Solar panels. How efficient are they? How long does it take them to start losing their efficiency?
Mhm.
What's their lifespan and disposal?
Excellent question. So solar power is generally about 25% efficient. So it's kind of measured as a capacity factor. So what that means is 25% of the time it's producing at optimal efficiency. That degrades about 0.5% generally across multiple technologies annually. And the lifespan is 35 years. That's what we are currently operating now. Some panels and a lot of new technology as it progresses can last longer than that. But Dominion, we are on the conservative side because we want a system to be able to operate kind of optimally as long as we feel confident that it can do so. So that's 35 years right now. And in terms of disposal, we enter into decommissioning arrangements with every county we work with, decommissioning provisions with our landowners to completely restore the site. So that means tearing everything down environmentally and responsibly, either reusing that equipment or recycling that equipment or disposing of that equipment if it can't be reused or recycled.
All right, so you say they're 25% efficient. All right,
That's the nature of what you described earlier. They operate when the sun is up and they don't operate when the sun's down.
yeah, I guess that's the biggest drawback. If sun's shown 24 hours a day, it'd be ideal. But it doesn't shine for a period like that.
Sure, and however, what the benefit of that is we're not paying for the sun to create that energy. Whereas we are paying for gas pipelines, we are paying for uranium, for nuclear.
Understand that,
And
yes.
so that's the sort of trade-off, which is why it's an important part of our fuel mix. This is a zero cost fuel. It's a generation
Yeah.
resource.
I can see it being a part of your energy source, yes.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're describing.
And that's just like wind. Wind is another
It's
source.
exactly the same. Yeah, but wind has a very different generating profile. Wind probably has about maybe 60-70%. Excuse me.
A little bit less than half of what solar does. It's got other,
I think our data sources may be a little bit different.
okay.
So I want to follow up on his question, because I thought what I heard you say was the solar panels have a life of 25%, but you're planning on a 35-year lifespan. And you,
So can you say that again? Because I think you're misquoting what I said in response to this question.
about 35 years is what you're planning.
That's how long a solar facility lasts.
Facility, okay. So does that mean that in 2023, 2024, you put a solar facility in place and in 35 years, it has to disappear? Or can you replace those panels so that it continues to work?
We can replace those.
That's,
panels.
that's my only clarification. I thought what I heard you say was you had to dispose of the whole thing,
No.
but you just take the panel off and put a new one.
If
And then the
that's-
sheep keep
if
eating
that's-
grass, it's all good. Okay, got it.
Sure, I mean, if that's what the landowner can accommodate.
Understood.
landowner's gonna let us reuse that land. If the other infrastructure that's holding those panels can accommodate that, we're certainly gonna, seek to reuse and recycle the
Understood.
equipment where
Thank you.
possible.
A while ago, you mentioned nuclear in aspects for further generation of electricity. Does Dominion have any plans right now on the books whatsoever for any new nuclear stations?
In our integrated resource plan, I think we have historically included nuclear generation as a part of our upcoming, and I don't know exactly which year, but nuclear is always an important part of that fuel mix of sort of our build plan for the next 10 years and the next 20 years. So nuclear is always part of that. I don't know specifically kind of when we plan to get iron in the ground on new nuclear, but it is. a
Right
technology that
now you don't have it, correct? For
That's
this
not what I
day?
said. No, that's not what I said. What I said is we are always planning to have nuclear as part of our fuel mix. And we are also always reviewing new technology.
But my question was, do you have anything going right now for nuclear under construction or going to construct anything?
Under construction.
Or
we
the
do
very,
not.
or the very near future? Do you know of anything, any construction in the very near future? Within the next
If-
5
if-
years?
So within the next 5 years, if there's anything that hasn't been publicly announced, this is not the venue to do so. In terms of what we have in our integrated resource plan, like I just mentioned, yes, there is nuclear in that plan. Under construction right now, no, we do not have any nuclear facilities under construction right now.
How about an operation? Do you have any nuclear
Yes, we have.
generation, atomic
We have
related?
yes, we have 3 facilities, 2 in Virginia that are currently operating in Virginia.
2.
North Anna and Surrey.
Okay, that's what I thought.
All right, any more questions?
All right, I feel like we need to go to storage because we kind of tackled my other solar slides.
Yeah.
Why don't we move on? Whoever's
Yep.
controlling the slides. I'll introduce you to Kelsey Jewell, my teammate. She's an energy storage expert. Thank you for your questions. Happy to also
Thank
be
you.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah, more.
Happy ambush.
So glad.
All right, I was gonna say it's good to be home, but I guess I'll wait until the end of the presentation to say that. Several of you have told me in the past that I'm loud, so if I'm too loud, let me know and I'll push it back. So I think we can go one more slide, and just like Austin did, I'm happy to accommodate any questions as they come up. I do want to be clear, Dominion has no intentions to build energy storage in Northumberland in the near-term future, and likely won't due to the lack of transmission lines. What we're typically looking at for energy storage is interconnecting at the transmission level. So with Northumberland not being or not having those transmission lines running through, the likelihood that we construct energy storage in Northumberland is low. With that being said, I volunteered to come here. I am a native Northumberland. I graduated from Northumberland High School. So I volunteered to come here to be an objective resource for y'all. So feel free to ask any questions. Yeah, we'll go on. So what you see behind you on the slide is our interim storage targets for Dominion. Austin mentioned it, the Virginia Clean Economy Act that was passed in 2020 mandates solar and storage build limits for Dominion and AEP, the other regulated utility. So what you see behind us is the build plan for storage. So you can see 2025, we're going to meet that 250 megawatt target, ramping up to 1,200 megawatts in 2031, and then eventually up to that 2,700 megawatts by 2035. We currently have in development and under construction about 265 megawatts of storage throughout the state. We just brought our first standalone energy storage project online in Chesterfield County. It was 20 megawatts, 4-hour duration, 80 megawatt hour facility called Dry Bridge. And that's contributing to that 36 megawatts in operation now. We can go to the next slide. And I'll run quick through these so that we have plenty of time for all the questions. So what you see behind you is a general overview of an energy storage system. The photo on the right that the mouse is hovering over is actually Dry Bridge Energy Storage that I was just referring to in Chesterfield County. And you can see it just looks like shipping containers sitting on a site. Over on the left-hand side of that slide, you'll see kind of a cross section of one of those storage containers. So these enclosures are designed as kind of modular groupings of containers that can accommodate varying sizes of facilities. So you have your cell, which is inside of a module, which is inside of a rack, which is ultimately inside the enclosure, which looks like a shipping container. All right, we can go ahead to the next slide. So what you see before you is Darbytown Battery Storage. This was a pilot that was petitioned to the State Corporation Commission last year. And what was this pilot project was petitioned under the Grid Transformation and Securities Act, which was passed in 2018. One of the benefits of this legislation has been it's allowed us to pilot energy storage projects and kind of provide a pathway for us to gain experience both developing these types of projects, operating and maintaining these types of projects. One of the first ones on the generation side was Scott Energy Storage. It was a solar plus storage unit located out in Powhatan. And this will be the second and third iteration on the generation side. The distribution and transmission team is also piloting energy storage projects for use at substations. I'm not the expert in that. If you have questions on those types of uses, I can run those down for you, but that is done by my counterparties. But what you see here and what's interesting about Darbytown Battery Storage is in this picture up to the left or the upper right-hand corner, you'll see our existing Darbytown power station. So that is a 4-unit simple cycle natural gas fired plant. And down to the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see 2 separate signs, and I'd ask for a pointer, but over to the top portion, you'll see 2 small blocks. That's actually EOS, and that is a 4 megawatt, 16 megawatt hour zinc halide battery. And then to the bottom right of that bottom portion, sorry, is Form, which is actually a 5 megawatt 500 megawatt hour iron air battery. Oh. Perfect. So this is EOS, and then this is Form. So what's really interesting about this pilot is it's allowing us to pilot alternative technologies to lithium ion. And that's very important because I know there were several concerns brought up about the manufacturing of lithium ion. This is kind of taking that outside, or kind of getting us out of that geopolitical risk of lithium ion and the anticipated competition with the electric vehicle market. So what's interesting about Form is not only is it a lithium ion alternative, but it is also a long duration energy storage project. So one thing that we found out going back to the event that Austin mentioned, Winter Storm Elliott in 2022 on Christmas Eve, what we found out was that our no lithium ion energy storage projects were online at that time, but we do have the largest pump storage facility in the Western Hemisphere. It's called Bath County. And what Bath County does is it actually discharges water from an upper pond to generate electricity and then pumps that water back up to the upper reservoir, and it utilizes electricity while doing so. So it functions as a type of long duration energy storage. It's about an 8-hour duration. And what we found is that Bath County used all of its water from the upper pond by generating for 8 hours and was not able to pump the water back up because there was not enough excess electricity on the grid during Winter Storm Elliott in order for it to charge. So Form is allowing us to pilot a 100-hour duration energy storage technology, which will be monumental in ensuring grid reliability in the future. All right, so that was all my slides, and I know we have lots of questions. So I can start with the question about the national blueprint, if you'd like, since that one's already been asked, or I can open it back up to the floor. All right, I could Sure. So the national blueprint through the DOE, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know what that is. I can find out for you what our participation is, but I will tell you what we are doing. So we have participated in an energy storage task force, and the consensus through that task force has been that the advancements in recycling of lithium ion are actually going to develop with the electric car market. So unlike a combustion turbine market where a utility has typically been the predominant buyer and utilizer of a technology, we are not that today. I mean, batteries are not a new technology. We all have them in our phones, we have them in our computers, and the electric car industry has been using them before we realized a utility, or before the utility use for those was fully grasped. With that being said, they're manufacturing millions of these cars each year, and the utility market for lithium ion batteries is, we don't run that market. So we come second to the electric car market, and a lot of the best practices and recycling capabilities are going to kind of be dictated by what's learned throughout that market, because those batteries will typically need to be recycled and retired sooner than utility scale batteries, just because of the density. So we do meet annually and we'll continue to meet annually to discuss with the industry best practices in recycling. And there are people that are certified today to dispose of and recycle lithium ion in the United States. So if we were to need to dispose of or recycle something at Drybridge, there are companies that are certified to do that. But I will check back with you. I did take a note, and I will let y'all know what our involvement in the national blueprint is. Thank you.
I'll take 3 questions.
Sure. I feel like y'all are taking it easy on me after Austin.
Oh, I get harder.
All right.
Oh, question.
Sure.
You said none of these battery facilities are scheduled at this time to be built here in Northumberland County.
I said Dominion.
Dominion.
Yes.
Okay. That being said, for Dominion.
Yeah.
In the northern neck and middle peninsula, are there any there in the
Sure.
northern, any other parts of the northern neck or the middle peninsula?
Yeah.
Or,
Can I operate this thing
and the
too?
reason I'm asking is the mutual aid aspect for the local fire departments.
Yeah, so I'll actually go into the fire department and the training that we offer too. Can we go back a couple of slides to the map with storage? Okay, so the dark green that you see here are storage facilities in operation, so you can see. Sorry, I feel like I'm gonna blind somebody. Don't turn around. So you can see Henrico County here, that's the Darbytown pilot that's coming online. You can see Chesterfield is right there, Powhatan. So you've got Scott, and then you've got Dry Bridge and Chesterfield. Up here, you have Hanover and New Kent. Those are two of the distribution and transmission.
But
This light,
not to cut you off.
yeah,
But what I was looking at, closer, we will not be going to Chesterfield and Henrico. I'm looking at maybe something in Westmoreland.
yes, sir.
Essex, King and Queen.
I've got you. I've got you. All right. So again, not Northumberland County. I know, born and raised here. This is not Northumberland County, but it is circled red and that's where we are.
Okay.
Right here, you can see Richmond County, Lancaster County, and Middlesex County. We do have energy storage in development in all of those counties.
Damn.
That's what we're wanting.
To add on to what I was asking on that, and it's part on the training.
Yeah.
So, you're gonna offer training to the local fire departments.
Yes. So can I give you an example? I know you may not go here, but I feel like it's very similar. I understand. I grew up here. All of our firefighters are volunteer. The majority of our EMS, as far as I know, is still volunteer. These are people that I grew up with, graduated with, are friends with, that are serving on our volunteer fire departments. I get it. A locality that you may look to that's very similar is Sussex. So Sussex is very rural. We do have an energy storage project that was already approved by the State Corporation Commission. We're actually going to start construction on that project in the next couple of months. The name of the project is Shands. It's a smaller project, 15.7 megawatts, so about 16 megawatts, 4-hour duration. It is lithium ion. But further, they also have a solely volunteer fire department. So what we did and what we will continue to do, and what we are happy to do for y'all, even though we don't have energy storage planned here, is we do have a corporate risk team that are all, or a lot of them are retired New York City Fire Department. So they work for Dominion. They help develop all of our plans, our corporate safety in regards to these types of facilities. And they're the ones that actually come out and educate the fire departments and EMS on different, and again, I'm not a firefighter, so I'm not the expert in that to tell you like from a technical standpoint, but they will come out, they'll talk to you, they'll educate you. But what we've done in Sussex is we came out, we educated them throughout the permitting process to get them comfortable with the technology and how the energy storage facility worked. And then prior to batteries being delivered on site for construction, we will meet with the fire department again. Understanding that it's volunteer, we're actually doing it in shifts to ensure that we cover every single person that is volunteering for that locality to train them on how to fight a fire at that facility.
Okay. How about the cost of any special PPE or equipment that would be required to?
So there's, to my knowledge, and I'll let you describe what you're referring to, but to my knowledge, there is no special PPE or firefighting equipment that's needed to put out a lithium ion battery.
Alderson, you got anything you want to add to that? Because I'm looking at, we can have an electric car fire right now.
Yeah.
It takes hundreds of gallons of water. Hopefully, maybe, put it out. But it can reignite just as quick as it lit off the first time, because you can't really put them in. You got to cool them. Water supply. What about around these large facilities like this? What about water supply? We rely on tankers and shuttle water. It takes thousands of gallons of water for this thing to cool it, or whatever way you want to put it out. or control it. What are you looking at when it comes to that?
In regards to the water supply and what would be needed to put it out. So in regards to Dominion's approach to lithium ion batteries, and this is, I kind of want to start at step one on how we got there, right? Because it doesn't matter where we are, it's how we got there. So Dominion leads the industry in our practices for energy storage. And I don't want to speak on whether you've had a developer in here come in and kind of go over energy storage with you to try to propose a site. But if you were to look up an energy storage facility in California, in New York, those containers are spaced somewhere around 10 feet apart, which what you have to worry about when it comes to energy storage is thermal runaway. So it's one cell heating up so hot that it spreads throughout the container. And then if those containers are spaced too closely together, you run the risk of that thermal runaway propagating to another container. So what Dominion has done is they've spaced their containers out, industry leading. So whereas you'll see most 10 feet apart, Dominion does 25 feet. And what we have based that on is the fire risk from our main generator transformers. So we have a lot of experience with different types of electrical equipment and kind of used that as a basis for where we went with energy storage, even though it's an emerging technology. With that being said, as technology has evolved, we've learned a lot of things, right? So there's a couple of different things that you need to worry about with energy storage. You have a risk of fire and you have a risk of explosion, right? You have gases that build up within the container and then somebody opens the container and have an explosion. So what we learned is that you can fight one or the other, but you can't fight both. You put the fire out and the gases continue to build in the container. And as soon as somebody opens that container, you run the risk of the explosion. But if you let that fire burn out and vent the container will allow the gases to exit through the container. So Dominion's philosophy has been to let it burn because ultimately safety has and always will be Dominion's top priority, not only for our employees, but also for the communities that we live in and serve. So that's Dominion's philosophy. I can't speak to any other developer that's going to come in here and talk to you about energy storage, but
Aren't those gases toxic?
which gases?
The ones that are being released while we let it burn?
Yeah, so they actually just recently did a study in New York, I believe it was sponsored by Con Edison, that said that the gases and the smoke put off by an energy storage facility burning is actually the same as a normal house fire or a Home Depot or any other type of industry burning.
I'll look for some referee journals because Con Edison has a current interest. So
I'm sorry?
never mind. I'm gonna look for some other sources of studies. Only because from the standpoint of Con Edison, aren't they an energy company?
They are a regulated utility in New York, yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I don't expect you to know the answer on that one, but I'm just,
And I can look, I'll take it back and I'll see if there's any other studies.
yeah, I'm looking for some scientific journals only because if I don't know what these gases are. I mean, I'm sure folks in this room are firefighters. I'm not. I don't know anything about that stuff. But it just seems, it seems interesting to me that we'll let the fire burn, let the gases release. And again, I
Well, you have
understand, I'm not right, and the environment can absorb a lot of stuff.
So
So.
can I just touch on two different things with
Yes,
that?
please.
One, if you were to put water on it, you're then putting those toxins in the ground.
I get that.
So you're avoiding that environmental. The dispersion model for any type of fire when it goes out into the air, and I'm not an air dispersion expert, but it's less of an environmental effect for it going into the air because of dispersion. I will say that there is an independent study being done. Most of the time when you have a study, I'm sure Con Ed paid for the study. They're probably not the ones that ultimately
No,
did the
I
study, but you
yeah.
have to find somebody that's willing to pay for it. And typically it's going to be somebody who has a vested interest that's willing to pay for it, right? So there is a study that I believe is being put on by NFPA 855. I think, don't quote me on that. I'll get back to you, but there is an unbiased study that's occurring or in the process of occurring. I don't know that the results have come out yet, but they're testing the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I give you a hypothetical?
Sure.
Let's suppose we've got solar electricity being generated in Northumberland County, and hooked up to Dominion's wires. Could that power be wheeled to Chesterfield or some other place without a massive loss?
Are you asking me the same question you asked Austin to see if you get a different answer?
I didn't ask him that question. You could try, you could try to
Yeah,
answer it
it's-
if you know.
Yeah, so the solar energy that's hooked up, and again, from what Austin is presenting is distributed, interconnected solar farms, right? They're interconnected into the distribution lines, not the transmission.
And how far can you wheel the power from these generation stations? Can you get it all the way to the Richmond area? That's all I was asking.
If you needed to,
Well, you wouldn't do it if you didn't need to, so I don't know what your answer means.
so locally, a distributed energy resource, and Austin, feel free to jump in here and keep me honest, but the generation from those resources stays local on the distribution center.
Correct.
In theory, if you needed to wheel power, you could, the same way that any generator is wheeling power to Northumberland right now because there's no generators down here.
Right.
So it can happen.
So what is the maximum range you can wheel it?
Oh.
And is it enough to get it back to Chesterfield? Assuming you have a surplus generation in Northumberland.
Well, the resistance would be so great.
Pardon me?
The amount of resistance would be
So great, and I don't know that you're,
Yeah.
Wheel it.
and I think when we're talking about such small facilities, the line loss from here to Chesterfield, I mean, it wouldn't be worth the wheeling. But
I'm not an electrical engineer by any means, but I think what's been described is absolutely right. There would be certainly no economic benefit, definitely, and likely not really a physical electric benefit to those customers in Chesterfield County to try to wheel any generated power. From
Well,
here
to
there.
Mr. Brand's question earlier, we're not going to have any storage facilities in Northumberland. So if we have a surplus generation in Northumberland County, how far can it go and still be economically reasonable? A county over, 2 counties over? I don't know.
so to your hypothetical, I also want to pose my own. I said Dominion has no plans to build energy storage. I didn't say that Northumberland won't have any energy storage being proposed to you to store that solar
I
energy.
understand you only speak for,
So
Dominion.
your question is, if no energy storage is built in Northumberland, and there were, let's say hypothetically, 20 megawatts of solar facilities built in Northumberland, but Northumberland was only using 15 megawatts
Right.
of electricity, how far could you wheel that additional 5 megawatts? Is that?
that's more or less accurate, or
Ah.
put it another way, what do you do with the surplus 5?
So you can't you can't store electricity on the grid without energy storage. So you'd have a couple of different options. One is wheeling to a neighboring locality. If I had to guess, again, not an electrical engineer, you're talking maybe Westmoreland, Lancaster, Richmond County. It would go to them first because it's on the distribution line and all of the distribution lines are interconnected.
Leaving aside the ripple effect, are there ways to, using your hypothetical, are there ways to
Dump,
get rid of the excess 5 megawatts
you could,
without having a storage facility in the county?
Yes, realistically, what would happen is these generated resources are going to be interconnected at the distribution system, and that distribution system is going to be fed by a number of circuits that are connected to a substation. And that substation is fed by transmission lines that do not exist within Northumberland County. They exist kind of in the surrounding counties.
Uh-huh.
And so from that substation, those transmission lines will exist a PJM meter. And that's where if there's excess generation coming back on these lines from Northumberland County, if there's excess generation, then we're gonna send that energy onto the transmission lines and monetize it in the wholesale energy market. So
So
that's
that,
what we,
is that standard practice in
yes.
existing facilities?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, does that do it? Okay.
Yeah, can you, so we're not, never mind. That wasn't a question, so I won't address your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a
Alright.
question.
yes, sir.
Give me an analogy of what well, we don't have battery storage,
Correct.
so that's not gonna be a problem shipping it. We don't have anything to ship, I guess.
I'm
and
sorry,
now
can you repeat that?
the energy. Now, as far as, it's kind of, I look at it, electricity is kind of like a fluid, and it's got to go somewhere. We don't have a place to store it. Are we selling what we're generating, or what whoever owns the solar panels? Are we selling that back to Virginia Power, getting credit for that? How does that work?
So I think it depends on who owns the solar facility, right? And I'm gonna assume in this analogy that we're talking about everything is Dominion owned and operated for the purposes of this conversation. So to Austin, and I don't want to speak for him, the generation that is coming onto the distribution grid from these solar facilities is going to be first utilized by the local residents. I think what Austin was just describing is anything in excess would go to the wholesale power market through the transmission system.
And there would be some credit coming back to Northumberland County for the extra 5 megawatts we were talking about.
So it would be shared through all of Dominion's customers the same way that all of the benefits are, except for the aspect that the power that's hooked, or the power that's generated on a distribution connected asset first goes to serve the community that it's located in.
And I assume that as this process continues, there is a lot of negotiation over all these points, safety, excess generation, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So we, as any solar or energy storage facility is brought before a locality, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes in. There's a lot of discussions that are had. There's a lot of talking points and negotiations, for lack of a better word, that happen around gives and takes and what everybody's willing to do, whether it be buffers or safety and training that y'all would require. So there's a lot of different things that go into any storage or solar project that Dominion brings forward.
The half the county supplied, more or less half, by Dominion, more or less half the county by Northern Neck Electric Cooperative. In the bidding and, permitting process described by an NEC, there is a list that the applicant basically needs to fill out. And that would address some or all of these points. And I believe that's also reflected in the state regulations. I assume that Dominion has got what amounts to the same sort of licensing or permitting agreement process. Is that correct?
So I think for a point of clarification, I think what you're referring to is the interconnection process to both Northern Neck Electric and Dominion's state interconnection queue.
I saw it in an NEC document. And they were talking about what you had to submit.
And it's probably what they need to submit in order for a project to be able to interconnect into their lines. Dominion does have something similar. It is on the interconnection website, but I think from a locality perspective, that would be irrelevant. It's not anything that would likely influence a project from what y'all would be looking at. What you would probably be looking at is provisions of a conditional use permit or a special exception permit. Those interconnection documents are typically just the capacity that they're trying to interconnect, where it's located, their point of interconnection.
Well, so it's sort of a chicken or the egg situation, because I don't imagine our Board of Supervisors would approve any project that hadn't been at least blessed or sanctioned or whatever you call it by the providers and NEC and Dominion.
So a couple of things there, all of the projects that are, and that makes sense. I get what you're saying, chicken and an egg thing. Are you able to interconnect? Should you show us that you're able to interconnect, and then we'll approve the project, right? We're not going to approve a project that's not ready to interconnect. I would say that it's never about whether something can interconnect. It's more about what the cost to interconnect is. So when they're putting forward all this information, what they're studying in those in those queue studies for whether it's Dominion State Q or Northern Electric's, when they're doing their electrical studies for those projects, it's gonna come back with a cost of upgrades to the distribution system and what that developer would need to pay in order to interconnect that facility into the grid. So it's never, can they do it? It's how much is it gonna cost?
Right.
The developer bears the brunt of that cost.
If I may, it's probably also worth describing the sort of steps that would need to occur before a project is presented to you. And really, one of those first steps is applying for an interconnection application with either the utility, whether it being Dominion Energy Virginia or Northern Electric Co-op.
Be one of the two.
And so what that means is way before it ever comes to you all to review the project, that project owner needs to understand whether or not it can be built there, how much it's going to cost to be built there. And then they go out on site and do all the necessary analyses and studies to figure out if that site can even be constructed. Once all of that is done, then that project gets to a point where it's presented to you all to figure out if you all want it.
Okay. Thank you.
Please.
For the wholesale, for any electricity that does end up in the wholesale market, is there a split share that the county gets? Is it 100% goes to Dominion? And again, I'm a pure capitalist, so I don't have a problem with profit, not at all.
Sure.
However, county residents, is there any portion of that sale that comes back either in reduced bills for the county or other resources given to Northumberland County, because that's where the electricity was generated?
So the way Dominion monetizes its generation fleet is not project specific, and it's not kind of allocated by county. And so the way we would monetize this project would fall into that program, and that we would bid our projects into the market, bid our energy into the day ahead market, bid our capacity into any forward markets that it has access to. And so to allocate it by county is just not how it works, because we're just gonna socialize those costs across all the customers. You know, that's just how we operate our business. That's how we make money. We participate in the available markets that we have access to. And so that's just not a feasible.
Is that subject to negotiation like the interconnect agreements?
No,
No.
no,
So-
that is how Dominion operates as a utility, and that is how energy markets work.
Well, I understand the difference between a retail and a wholesale price for bulk energy transmission.
Sure.
How do you determine if there is energy generated in Northumberland County? How do you assure that Northumberland will get an equitable share of the surplus? Or is there any way to do that?
It's metered, isn't it? I mean,
No, I'm talking about going out, surplus, not the usage.
So
well, that ought to be metered too.
again, the benefit of any excess generation is going to end up as a net positive in any sort of economic calculation on Northumberland County's bills. So to say that your tax advisor and your county planner can easily track that would be inaccurate, because it's going to end up on everyone's customers' bills, myself included.
Okay, so you could theoretically notify the Board of Supervisors as to the annual surplus and the gross reduction in fees to Northumberland County citizens, correct?
No. What I just said.
Like
is
you
that
said, it was
that's-
gonna fit, they'd
That's
see it on
not
their bill.
something that is possible. That's not a feasible exercise. That's what I said.
Well, we do know that if there's surplus power generated, that's going to be reflected in the bills that are paid by Northumberland County residents,
I
no?
think it's worth also understanding that it certainly won't be as clear as we're describing now how we operate our energy markets, how we operate our energy trading in the wholesale markets. That's where it's actually going to be realized. So if there's the 5 megawatts that could be in excess that we're describing here, that could be you know, what, say that's 2,000 megawatt hours. That 2,000 megawatt hours is part of the larger pot of, say, 800,000 megawatt hours that we're trading that day. And so to allocate it individually to Northumberland County residents is an infeasible exercise, and that's what I'm trying to describe.
So you're actually kind of creating an incentive for Northumberland County to undergenerate if they get no benefit from surplus power.
No, what I'm describing is we are creating solar generation that benefits Northumberland County residents, which are Dominion Energy customers. And then, but more ideally, we would create a generating facility that is wholly consumed by that community before it has any need to generate any excess. Because in reality, projects that of 3 megawatts and smaller, we're not going to try to participate in the wholesale market for those. And so if there is excess generation, that's just going to get consumed by the community. We're not going to try to monetize that because it's too small for us to try to actively monetize that. In the event there is excess generation, which in reality there likely will not be, or there will be an insignificant amount of.
Mr. Jones, do you have like studies that show how much electricity is consumed by Northumberland County citizens within the Old Dominion service, Dominion Power Service area?
I personally don't know the usage of the Northumberland County residents. I'm not sure if that's something we could.
Can we
do.
see if it
I know
exists?
because I have a market function at Dominion.
I may
I'm
be
actually not
asking
allowed
for
to
a
have that
needle in a
information, 'cause
haystack.
that would give me a market advantage. So I'm personally, I'm not allowed to have that information, but that information exists. And
I'm sure you pay lots of people to gather data. I'm just wondering if this happens.
Well,
to be-
FERC prevents me from having that data. That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Jones, could I ask you a question, sir? In order to have excess, I'm thinking that means solar would have to produce enough current to stop power, to power the whole county and not have current coming in from other resources. Is that correct? And I don't see how that could ever happen.
That's what he's describing. That's exactly what I agree with you. I think that's a very unlikely hypothetical
It's
situation.
very unlikely in God's green earth. I mean, solar's great, but it ain't that great.
That's my point.
And
We were talking
never
about a
see
theoretical
excess coming in. Going anywhere.
circumstance. That's in reality, I think it's highly.
If that was the case, I think we'd better build 100 of them tomorrow. You know, but that's not gonna happen. So I don't think there's ever gonna be excess. Even with
For
the tremendous,
distribution,
even
for
with the
distributed
tremendous.
generation resources, there will likely not be a situation where there's excess generation enough to do so to export it.
I can't see solar panels, no matter how great they are, powering all of Northumberland County at one time to where we had excess current. I can't see that. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir.
I would agree with that theory. Please, ma'am.
Change the subject a bit. Has Dominion had to decommission any of your solar farms or solar projects?
Yes, there are a handful that we have had to decommission. And the reason we had to decommission those was because the technology, after kind of several years of operation, we found that it wasn't as efficient as other technologies that we had in the system. And so technology is evolving quite rapidly in the renewable energy and solar space. And so we monitor and review our systems regularly. And at these couple of sites, we found that they just weren't operating at that efficiency rate that I described earlier. And so we elected to take those offline.
You elected to take them off grid, not upgrade them to the new technology for whatever reason.
Yeah, so the original plan was to upgrade them. However, our conversation with the landowner felt like they had a more lucrative option to do something else rather than solar. So that's just a conversation again, that it's really up to the host and us to assess those concerns, those factors and decisions.
Can you give us a rough estimate of how long it took to decommission? Like,
Those sites, those were very small sites. And I think it took
so by very small,
less than a megawatt.
Okay.
And so that took less than a month. I think
less than a month?
what we typically see for a facility of 3 to 5 megawatts, or even these larger facilities, we like to give up at least a year to do so. And that's just to make sure that the site is in fact completely torn down and the area is restored to the best that it can be to its original condition.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes.
What happened to those panels when those sites were decommissioned? Where are they now?
Yeah, good question. So some of those panels went to a recycling facility in California. There's a company there that actually works with developing countries in South America. And I think they have some countries they work with in southern parts of Africa where they don't have the same sort of need, excuse me?
Oh, go ahead.
Regulation.
Yeah, that could be one word for it. And so those panels are still available to use. They still work. And so they can still provide power. And so this company works with various companies in these areas to provide energy there. And then I don't think there were any panels from these two sites that needed to be disposed of because they weren't functioning at all. But in the event that there would have been, this company also works with a couple of environmentalists that dispose of these panels, like I said, responsibly. But right now that's a budding sort of area of the market as well. Recyclers and disposers, because it's a growing and evolving industry. And so right now there are really only a handful of companies that do this, but they're doing it pretty well and a lot of people are benefiting from it.
No, you're fine. One thing I wanted to touch on, and I believe was part of the question earlier that I don't know if either of us touched on, but as far as decommissioning, when a project comes before a planning commission or a board of supervisors, typically we work with the locality to come up with a decommissioning plan that's updated. For the energy storage facility in Sussex County, for instance, it's updated every 5 years with recycling information, cost estimates, things like that. And I believe the question was who ultimately covers the cost of the decommissioning, and that's borne by the developer. So the county is not responsible for decommissioning that. The developer, in our case Dominion, bears the cost of decommissioning the project and returning the farmland or property, whatever it may be, back to its original use.
You did say that you normally give yourselves a year on an average project, average size project.
That's right.
Thank you.
And that typically gives us enough time to do those restoration activities and also tear down the facility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why were the projects decommissioned as opposed to refurbished? Why would you,
The landowner.
it wasn't.
Yeah, I think I just answered this question.
The
So with
landowner.
that one,
For the landowner.
yeah, well, we
Wanted to
discovered.
do something else with it after the term.
That's
expired.
right. They just found that, yeah, so the termination provision of these had obviously been enacted and this landowner elected to take a different route.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Penny has a question here.
Talk about decommissioning for a second. I need to go to a microphone.
Sure.
Speak up a little bit, we'll be all right.
The question that I have regarding decommissioning is that at any given one time, you can drive down a highway and somebody's burying a cable. Correct? When has a cable ever been taken out of the ground? i.e., in the case of a solar farm with panels through the ground, there's probably a fair amount of cabling beneath the surface of the ground. Is it removed?
So let me just make sure I understand your hypothetical to be sure. So you're asking if cables that are placed underground on a solar facility are removed. Is that your question? Yes, that's the answer to your question. All the electrical equipment, all the posts, inverters, wires, racking systems, panels, everything is removed from a solar facility that was installed.
I dare say with today's copper shortage going on, with the amount of cables that are in the ground across the United States, we would not have a copper shortage.
So I can't speak to that, but to answer your question, everything that would be installed on a facility to support a solar generation would be removed when decommissioning.
Just put it this way, we just don't want to run into a situation where somebody is doing something in a facility and they get a cable, A, they don't know if it's hot or not. Okay. B, they have to have a union come out and look at it, which I had to go through with a house that's many years old. We put in a new water line. We had a cable that was 3 feet in the ground. We had to have, stop what we were doing, have Dominion come out and certify that it was dead, so that we could continue doing our job.
We appreciate those safe
And I'm
practices.
talking,
So-
three copper lines.
Yeah, I do want to be clear. Again, to reiterate, anything that's installed to support a solar generation facility is removed during the decommissioning. And that is enforced by your board and in the decommissioning plan before that decommissioning plan gets approved. And so I do want to be clear, safety is paramount to Dominion. And what you described as an unsafe situation, we will do our best to avoid that at all costs.
Well, the fact of the matter is, out of sight, out of mind. Because if it's buried 18, 24, 36 inches in the ground.
Well, it's not out of sight and out of mind for someone that is responsible for those decommissioning activities.
Okay.
I want to make that clear. It's not out of sight, it's not out of mind. It's an important part of the decommissioning of that facility.
Mr. Jones?
With regards to the Virginia Clean Energy Plan, the percentage, what percentage towards the goal have you met so far with the ones that are already online and the ones that have been improved? How far are you along to that goal of 2035 in the clean energy plan for solar energy?
Yeah, so I think what you're referencing is the Dominion Energy is responsible for presenting as part of our 16,100 gigawatts. We also have to present NRPS plan, a renewable portfolio standard plan. And in that, we have to indicate our progress toward meeting these targets of 16,100 gigawatts, certain number of RECs. And we also have to describe the allocation of company-owned projects as compared to purchase power agreements that we are procuring from the market. And that split right now is codified as 65% company-owned, 35% PPAs. And right now, we are on track with that 65, 35%. And we have demonstrated that plan in our most recent filing, and we will continue to do so every time we do file our RPS plan annually, which is required to, again, demonstrate and illustrate that progress.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how close are we to meeting that goal in 2035? Are we 10% there? Are we 25% there? We have 50% there, or you have
So right
that?
now, we've got
Well, that's
36
energy
megawatts
storage.
in storage, 2,100 megawatts of some, to go back to the solar slide, 2,100 megawatts of solar in operation. And so what is that?
Okay, I thought that was just energy storage. I thought we were talking about
Right.
renewable energy.
Solar.
Sorry,
A
goal.
few slides before this is the solar slide that I was describing. There are 2,100 megawatts currently in operation of solar. We are currently tracking 7,200 more megawatts currently in development in construction. And myself and several of my colleagues, we have innumerable others that we aren't ready to make publicly available to help us reach those targets.
Okay, so you don't have a number, or I need to run the numbers?
So the number at what it's 2,100 of 1,600.
Okay.
That is 13%. Thank you. Yeah.
And the second question I had is the Indian Fields peak power generating facility. Are these gas turbines being replaced by battery energy storage facilities?
Can
In
you
Richmond
repeat that
County.
question, please? I may ask Kelsey to answer this, but can you repeat the question, please?
There's a peak power storage facility in Indian Fields in Richmond County that's on the main transmission line, and it has jet turbines that run when we need extra power.
Are you referring to Northern XCTs that are run off of fuel oil?
Yeah. Right.
I don't believe that there are any plans to change those over to energy storage anytime soon. I mean, those plants are still being utilized today as peaking resources, and we're
Right.
running.
Well, I think it's important for the region.
Yeah, and we're running a couple of weeks ago. Yeah,
Okay.
those plants are gonna be running the way that they are for reliability for our
Thank you.
customers.
All right. How about if we take a 10-minute break and we'll come back?
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right.
We're not doing anything.
Pick up where you left off.
I think we left off fielding questions.
Yeah.
Yes, again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions.
Can
I
you,
appreciate your answer.
can you get it back up on the screen?
We went so long, the projector turned off.
It's quiet around here without the projector.
I think if we want to advance a few more slides, we can talk through some of these benefits. We've talked about a lot of these already, so let me just kind of skip to the funding for community needs, and I think Karen actually had a good idea for one of them, and there's currently legislation that enables specific community benefits for projects that can be enabled by approving a solar project. And so that's something that the project owner and you all would negotiate ahead of time before approving a project. And so that's, one other additional way that a community can benefit from hosting one of these projects. I'll also add the local construction jobs, that's constructing solar facilities is, a temporary job, and I don't think it's a secret that solar facilities don't have a bunch of permanent jobs. However, these construction jobs and the labor is quite valuable for a lot of individuals that participate in these apprenticeship programs. They can travel across the Commonwealth, across the Mid-Atlantic with the skills that it requires to build a solar facility. And it's not just building the project, there's all these other indirect jobs that are associated, that are enabled by the proliferation of solar in the Commonwealth. And so that also leads to the other benefits that businesses have. There's one example that I want to, someone actually told me about that, because he made a killing from a project in the south of Virginia. He noticed that these construction crews, they were cleaning out these ice containers from every gas station, every convenience store, and within a 5-mile radius of these solar projects. So he's like, well, I could just put up a little ice stand, procure some ice, every morning and sell them the ice. And that's what he did for an entire summer. Made a killing. That's just one, one small example. There's other things like, people making the food stands, small sandwich shops, things like that. Things you might not think about that support these construction operations for a solar facility that can indirectly help these communities. But I think if we want to go to the next slide, what we really want to talk about, and I think a lot of the questions we already talked about, a lot of the things that you all are really most important to think about are your policy considerations when you create your ordinances, when you create your comprehensive plan, and when you're considering approving solar projects. We try to categorize them in sort of 3 simple buckets, even though no decision is simple and every project is unique. We want to think about the development considerations, and that's from your perspective. It's really understanding the economic impacts that a project is going to have on your citizens and on your community. And so that's where you're talking about the conditions. You're talking about any proffers, like I just described, that you may be able to elicit from this project, because that's where you can really regulate how that facility is built, how that facility is operated, how that facility is decommissioned, and what type of monetary value you can extract from that facility to support that community. This is where it happens in the development phase and before you're getting it approved. And when you're making those decisions, you also want to consider your individual landowners' rights, because that's important. I'm sure you all can appreciate the importance of that for those landowners, like I was describing earlier. Some of these landowners, if they, for one reason or another, have weighed all of their options and have come to the decision that solar is the best thing for their livelihood, for their legacy, then I think that's an important consideration for you all to make when you're reviewing these projects. And then give yourselves the flexibility to really review each project individually based on its merits. Because when and the reason why I describe that is some of these counties across the Commonwealth, they'll put in artificial acreage caps, they'll put in artificial density caps, which I can appreciate the intent and I understand the intent. However, when you have caps like that, it creates a sort of race to the finish line to meet that cap that doesn't always allow for the best projects to rise to the top and to hit that finish line first. And so what I would suggest is when you're considering policies and just making sure that you all as a board have the flexibility to really scrutinize every individual project on its own merits, rather than just because this one hit the cap and that one didn't. Just throwing that out there as a point of consideration that we've seen have success in some counties. And then when you're, once it gets to the stage of construction, be sure public safety is paramount in your considerations. Ensure that the environmental controls are safe and very clear in how they are being managed and properly mitigating any sort of runoff or other sort of environmental event. Make sure that those are being prevented adequately. And then also ensure that there's transparent communication between the project owner and the community and any other first responders or anyone else that would need to be able to communicate with the system operator, because like we described, they're first responders, fire folks, volunteer EMS folks that need to be able to contact that system operator to be sure that everyone is safe. And then, on the last point, when you're considering the end of life of these systems, we've already talked a bit about recycling, restoring. I would say just when you're reviewing decommissioning plans, when you're reviewing the counterparties that you're working with, these project owners, these Dominion, because I'm not asking you all to treat us any differently. When you're reviewing these developers that are coming to you, be sure that these folks are creditworthy and that they can in fact stand behind what they say when they're going to pay for the cost of restoring this facility, tearing down all the facilities. Be sure that they're able to pay for that, and make sure you have confidence that they will in fact do that. And that can take a few different forms. Some counties have different decommissioning security requirements. Others rely on the investment grade quality of that entity. So that can take a number of different forms, but just be mindful of that. I'll offer that as a note of consideration. I imagine there are other questions on these points before I think we just end it and call it. Open it back up for questions.
Yeah, the point that we were discussing earlier, you had mentioned in conversation that in some cases, Dominion might come in and procure an existing project that was developed by another entity. And while we both acknowledge that that's likely fraught with a lot of potential failure if it's not done well up front, my larger question is for the purposes of future evaluations of projects on the front end of that life cycle, and you may not be able to even answer this in a short few minutes, but what quality and nature of things need to be done up front in writing to guarantee that not just whether or not the developer was credit worthy, but whether or not all of the right things are done up front to increase the likelihood that if it ever wanted to be a reality, that Dominion might even entertain it.
That's a great question. And yes, you're right. But I do want to clarify something you said before I answer that question. If Dominion is going to purchase a project that another developer has developed, this would be before it becomes an operational project. That's when Dominion enters into these acquisition discussions. But it does happen after a developer may come to you all for seeking approval for that project. And so what I would say is, when you're reviewing that developer's proposal, take all these things in mind and consider not only all of these things in terms of the safety, the viewshed concerns that you all have raised, the creditworthiness of the entity to be able to make sure that they can in fact stand behind their obligations to restore and decommission the facility, make sure that their design allows for safe egress and ingress so that first responders can respond adequately, make sure that the environmental integrity of that design is the environmental integrity of the landscape around and within that area is highly considered in that design that they submit to you all, because these are all things that we're going to look at. These are all things that we would do in our designs. These are all things that if that developer comes to me and calls me and say, hey, I want to say this project, these are all things that I'm going to scrutinize highly to even consider buying that project. And so it is important for you all to consider that. And then additionally, the other important thing that I want to make sure you all review is when this developer comes to you, ask them where that energy is going, because I know that's a concern that many of you all have brought up. If they're going to tell you this is a facility that's getting delivered to Amazon, consider that, because my projects aren't going to Amazon. If they're going to tell you this is a shared solar project such that it's going to a handful of subscribers, consider that. If they're going to tell you that we intend to sell this to Dominion for Dominion Energy customers, consider that. Those are kind of the available options for projects of this size right now.
Thank you.
Questions?
I just want to bring up a couple of different things when it comes to energy storage, looking at it from if a developer were to come to you. We talked a lot about the risks of energy storage, but I want to talk to you about a couple of things to look out for. One of the things that Dominion does to mitigate risk in energy storage is we test all of the batteries at both the unit, the module, all the way down to the cell level. And we test and certify them with UL 9540A, and we require an American test. So we require the test to be done in the United States before we will consider it complete. So that's something to look for when a developer comes to you and proposes an energy storage, require a US-based UL 9540A test down to the cell level. Dominion, again, does require that for all of our energy storage. I look at the spacing requirements between the containers. Just because you can fit 100 megawatts on a 10-acre site doesn't mean that you should. Think about from a safety perspective, both whether it's from being able to navigate the site or the risk mitigation of propagation between the containers. Think about that. Think about your active and passive fire protection within your containers. So whether that's emergency ventilation. So what we're seeing as technology emerges and Dominion's actively working with developers. Dominion itself doesn't buy off the shelf energy storage containers. So we're working with some developers to manufacture something specifically for Dominion's specifications that meet all of our safety specs. So some of the things that we're seeing in the market as the technology evolves is things such as sensors, sensing a cell is overheating and the doors automatically pop open because, and what that's doing is it's allowing air to get to that battery to kind of stop that heating process of that cell. Also looking at deflagration vents, so vents on the containers that are opening to allow that gas to escape. Yeah, so just a couple of different things to look out for. If there, we'll open it back up for questions, but Austin's and my contact information as well as Reagan's are all on the last slide of this presentation. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions going forward. I know that this is a lot of information to process, and I know questions come up typically after the fact. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll open it back up for questions.
Thank you all so much for the engagement, the questions. It was, very much appreciated. I think this is really important and really great that you all are taking the time to give this attention.
It was good to be home. Good to see everybody too. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Shit.
Right here.
District standards, the firefighting aspects of related and energy storage, what kind of we look for, what's being developed.
I think it would be a good thing to have a contact. So you reach out to me and. I do.
Get your contact.
Off the website, yes.
Are there any private
I don't
batteries?
Anything. You're gonna have to relay it. Knew what he was saying about.
Commercially
Oh.
operating? Yes,
Paid?
dry bridge is commercially
Yeah.
operating
40
in
hours
Chesterfield County. That's the one I showed a picture of.
Can we adjourn? Can I adjourn my group?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just checking. I didn't know if we had other business.
Would you comment on that?
Adjourn.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so EDC stands adjourned at 8:26.
Thank y'all.
Congratulations.
On adjourn.
26 and a half.
I was gonna adjourn if you open me.
Thanks, y'all, for coming in.
One thing before everybody goes, on the April 4th event with Dominion for smart meters, would love to have both the planning commission and the EDC back again.
Very good.
Yeah, we'd love to have y'all back. I know it's kind Oh.
When you say private, what do you mean private?
In other words, if somebody.
You mean do individuals own an energy storage, like energy storage? A lot of people do if they do energy storage on their roofs, or I'm sorry, put solar on their roofs. You don't have an energy storage system in their garage.
But I think your comment was.
Okay, so I want to clarify, what you're referring to.
What have I missed? Y'all been working circles around. me. I
That
should
is
have-
never
should
true,
be
but
doing
it's up to the
something
individual.
that I wasn't
whether they
doing.
solve Energy storage from a Dominion aspect likely will not exist in Northumberland due to the lack of training. That
Can I cut you off? We had all session like that. We're gonna take a quick recess. As soon as these other people get out. Okay. Yeah, I'll just, all right. I'm toxic, I'm toxic.
Yeah, I think I can.
Yeah, we probably got it, man, so.
Yeah.
So we actually, even though Dominion Power has any plans for it.
That mean other
Oh, there you
developments.
go, all right. So the developments that our fire departments may very well need to be prepared for.
Yes, and we're happy to be a resource for that and to like show y'all how we have them in operation. So we're happy to host y'all so that you can come see one. You can meet with our fire safety people and they can kind of go over everything with you.
Did you get that, Jim?
Yes, I told.
Even though they don't have it, private people may have it, so that would be a need for our private people to educate.
And we're happy.
All right, that's good. That's good.
My contact information is inside there if y'all have any questions. Reach out. It was good seeing all of you.
Thank you for coming.
Don't forget me on the training part, please.
You said don't forget what?
Don't forget me on the training part. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
We gotta get back. Get them out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care.
I guess.
Yes, sir. Sorry. No. I'm looking for my water cup.
Appreciate it, Bailey.
Thank you.
Appreciate your thoughts and, you know.
Good to see you.
It was very interesting. We learned a lot. Yeah, we did. We really did learn a lot. Yeah, you answered those questions that we had.
We try and do and, you know.
Okay, all right.
And, you guys don't have my contact?
You got your contact information.
You know, I might reach out in between.
All right.
Just get y'all's opinion.
Right.
So,
That'll be fine.
yeah, might expect a call.
All right, good enough.
People seem to do a good job.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Appreciate that. I'll pass that on. Much for anything from me? All good? I'm sure we'll talk next week or something.
All right.
No, sounds good. Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, everybody ready to get back? Call this meeting back to order. What's our next, next item would be county administrator's report. County administrator's items he has here.
Yes, sir. I think the first item we have is an update on the regional radio system. And Chief Balderson is here to provide an update on the splitting of the cell that we had discussed, I believe, earlier in February.
Chief Balderson?
As Mr. Tadlock has stated, I came before you previously and introduced the option of splitting the simulcast cell into two separate cells with ourselves in Lancaster. Lancaster has voted to split the cell at their last board meeting, along with some other things that they had on their agenda concerning the radio system, but that is the important piece that affects us. If you recall, the last time I was before you, we had asked L3 Harris to go back and do a breakdown for us of the cost, exactly what the cost meant. I believe you may have that in front of you. When they came back, they gave us that breakdown. As you see, the breakdown total equated to $169,671. Previously, when I met with you, the breakdown was $133,000 for Lancaster and rated $80,000 for us. When they went back and started doing the breakdown, the engineers talked with myself and Chief Smith, and we decided, to be fair across the board, we would split the difference in that while we're splitting the cell. So that's how we ended up with the price now of $84,835.50. So we increased a little bit on our side of that, but we also
looked at it as being a good neighbor and, partner with Lancaster in splitting this cell equally amongst the both of us. So that is the reason for the increase there. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Hopefully in the memo that I provided with that, it gives you the information that you need, to make your decision. But like I said, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer those best I can.
So the original price was 212,870.
Correct.
And so
And they
we got a savings of $43,200.
Correct.
Okay.
Overall, yes.
Overall,
Yes.
okay.
All right, any other board members have any questions, comments?
I have one. What was the reason for that savings?
Most of the savings there was the cost of, what they call services through L3 Harris. So they were willing to drop some of that cost off of their services, for doing that. What those services are, I can't answer 100%, to be able to give you a definitive answer of what those services are versus what's on the document there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what you're looking for 84,835.50 from Northumberland County, which goes along with, Lancaster's part.
We have the funds available for this, right? You've already identified the funds.
We do. We, actually, when we, entered into the, funding with Bank of America, we did, seek additional funds for instances like this.
All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
Yeah, I move that we move forward.
Of 84,835.50. All right,
I second that.
I've got a motion and a second. All right, do we have any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? All right. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Chief. All right. All right, Luttrell, you wanna? Or whenever you're ready.
Yes, sir. Next item I had, reference to the Boys and Girls Club grant request. I had previously discussed that with the board, and the board did ask if in-kind funds could be used to help offset any cost associated to the county. And talking with, Philip Mumford with the Boys and Girls Club, it does sound like the, Boys and Girls Club can use, some of the officer or deputies' time to help, offset that by in-kind funds. So, if the board, they do have to submit this grant, prior to our board meeting next week. That's the reason that I'm bringing it to the board tonight. If that is something that the board is interested in and concerned about using actual monies from the county, certainly authorize or agree to the grant without, using monies, but authorize it based off of the in-kind funds, with the officers.
And that will work for the grant. That will.
What they would do is, they feel like that could be used along with, some of the Boys and Girls Club in-kind match as well.
Bunch of talk.
I think they had a maximum on the grant But I think that would be something that they would need to take a look at, is how many hours the deputies would have involved with the project, and they could max it out that way. So I really can't answer your question as far as the amount that they would be requesting for that grant.
Well, are you asking for a motion?
Yes, sir, if
Yeah,
the
it's up
board
to the
wishes
board.
to do that.
Once we go to income service, that's
Yeah.
no dollars.
I don't have a better problem with going in kind.
I'll make a motion that we move forward. Grant the Girls and Boys Club using the income.
Second. All right, we got a motion and a second. Got any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. All those against? All right. What else you have, Mr. Tadlock?
All right, next item I have is for closed meeting.
All right, whenever you get your
All right.
language straight.
I need a motion that the Northumberland County Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2.23711A1, for the discussion and consideration of personnel matters. Invited to attend the closed meeting as necessary are the county administrator and assistant county administrator, because they are deemed necessary and their presence will reasonably aid the board in its consideration of the topics to be discussed pursuant to Virginia FOIA Section 2.23712F.
Word.
Second it. All right, got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, we are now in closed meeting.
Need a motion that the Northumberland Board of Supervisors return to public meeting and certify by roll call vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting, were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Wording, Mr. Tadlock.
All right, I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second it.
All right, got a motion and a second. We're gonna have a roll call vote. Chip,
Aye.
Junior,
Here.
Jimmy,
Aye.
Jim. All right. Richard votes aye. All right, we are now back into open meeting. And you want us to take action? That correct, Mr. Tadlock?
Yes, sir. And this is for the sanitary district position. The gentleman would be Zane Oliver.
Zane Oliver. What's that? That we bring on Zane Oliver at 37,346.97. And can start him whenever he can start, or whenever. You want to start him immediately, or?
I think just leave that
Or
at the,
leave that out?
just to hire him, and then
All
we'll
right.
work out the specifics and getting with him, because like I said, we
All right.
need to fill out some paperwork and stuff. So.
All right, got a motion to have a second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? All right. 5-0.
Aye.
What was that, Mr. Long?
Why can't we bring it? We'd have to look into.
I don't know. We have to look at all that. Yeah. That's not a whole lot of money.
Have anything else, Luttrell?
No, sir. That's all I had.
Um, do you want to give an update on?
I can, yes, sir. As you know, the board had contracted with UHY for forensic auditing services for both the county and the school division. We have had kickoff meetings this week. We actually had the kickoff meeting with some of the department heads today. And they have started emailing, UHY has started emailing some information to us to get started with those services. They are looking at trying to have something completed by the end of May timeframe. So just kind of give you an update on things. I'll try to answer any questions you may have.
All right, board members got any questions on that, anything?
Have any at this time?
All right. Just hope it all goes along smoothly. But we will keep you informed. All right, don't have anything else on the agenda. Next meeting, next week, that would be what, the 14th?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we do have the interviews on the 13th
13th.
for the engineer's roof.
Yep. So we will need a motion to carry over till the 13th at, what time is that? 2 p.m.
I'll make the motion.
All right, I got a motion, got a second. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 We got it on the fourth.